Hi, this is a quick video on hosting a Zoom webinar. In this video, we're going to go over how to schedule a webinar, adding panelists, screen sharing as a host, managing the chat, and the question and answer feature. First, we're going to look at scheduling a Zoom webinar. In order to begin, we're going to open my account from zoom.us. Select webinars from the menu on the left-hand side. Click on schedule a webinar on the upper right-hand side of the screen. And then from here, give your webinar a title, set the date and time, and adjust any other settings to your preference. Let's go ahead and go over to Zoom and see what that looks like. Let's back out of this. So if you are scheduling a webinar, you click on My Account, upper right-hand corner, select Webinar, and then Schedule a Webinar. From here, you can give your webinar a title, designate the time, how long it will take, require attendees to register, require any panelists or attendees to authenticate, which just means have them log in with a Zoom account, and several other settings. From here, your newly scheduled webinar is going to appear in the Upcoming Webinars tab. Once you have a webinar scheduled, you can add panelists. Panelists are full participants in the meeting, which means that they have access the same as most hosts have. So they can access screen share, they can have their video and audio on, and they can view the attendees list. Panelists must be assigned panelist permissions by the webinar host, either before the webinar starts or be promoted from attendee in the live session. If you know who your panelists are going to be, doing this before the webinar starts is really simple. Adding panelists manually is very straightforward. We're going to sign into the Zoom webinar panel. We're going to click webinars. We're going to click the topic of the webinar you want to add panelists to. And then from there, we're going to scroll down to the bottom of the page. And in the invitations tab, you're going to find invite panelists and click edit. So again, let's scroll back over to Zoom and see what that looks like. So we're going to click on this webinar that we just created, example webinar. We're going to scroll down to the bottom, and here's the invitations. And we want to invite panelists. So we're going to click on edit. From here, we're going to put in the name of the panelists and put their email in. So from here, we're going to click save. Once you click save, your panelist is going to receive an invitation that they can use to join the meeting as a panelist. Now, in some cases, you might not know before the webinar begins who the panelists are going to be. If you want, you can promote an attendee to panelists during the webinar. You're going to click on the Participants tab in the webinar controls at the bottom of your screen. Most of them are floating, so they open up when you scroll over or hover over with your mouse. And you're going to click on the Attendees tab. The attendees then have a More option. So you click, hover over the name of the attendee that you want to promote and click More. From there, you can click Promote to Panelist. At that point, the attendee has all of the same permissions that the host would have. So they are now a panelist. Sometimes we want to, and most times in a webinar, we have some content that we are going to share. So screen sharing is a tool that you can use to convey information to your audience. So you're going to click on the share screen. It's located in your meeting controls. You're going to select one of the screen share options. Now, there are 6 other options that you can use, but most often we're going to choose the basic share option. You're going to select the window with the content you want to share. So if you have a presentation, you will see your presentation as one of the options of what to share. You're going to click share, and then when you're done sharing, click stop share. Managing the chat and the Q&A. Webinars have both. They have the chat and a Q&A. So if you are the webinar host, you can change the in-webinar chat settings. The chat is a place for your attendees to send messages either to just the host and panelists, or they can send messages to everyone, and it can be a free-for-all. If you want to change those settings, you click on the chat icon in the meeting controls, click the ellipsis button to display the in-webinar chat settings. And then from there, you can either save the chat or you can control who the attendees can chat with. So you can disable it altogether and select no one, or you can allow your attendees to only send messages to the hosts and panelists by selecting hosts and panelists, or you can keep it open and select everyone. Now, in some cases, it's very important to keep the identity of your attendees a secret, confidential. And so you may choose to disable the chat completely and just use the question and answer feature. Question and answer feature for webinars allows attendees to ask questions during the webinar and for panelists, co-hosts, and hosts to answer their questions. When you schedule a webinar, Zoom has a default setting for the Q&A, but you can change these settings at any time. The default is to allow anonymous questions and for attendees to see only the answered questions. Now, if you notice, there are some other options as far as allowing attendees to view all questions and then allowing them to upvote and comment. And we're going to talk about upvoting in a moment. But as the host or the co-host or the panelist, you need to manage the Q&A. If you want to answer questions, you're going to click the Q&A in the webinar controls to view all submitted questions. You're going to find the questions that you would like to answer, and then you can choose to answer those live or type a response. Once you answer those questions out loud or as a written response, you're going to find that those open questions will move to the answered questions. If a question is asked that is not pertinent to the webinar, you can choose to dismiss the question altogether, and that question will move to dismissed. So a quick note on upvoting. If you so choose, if you give attendees permission, attendees can view questions and then vote on the questions. You can still allow attendees to ask questions anonymously, but if you allow for it, upvoting can really help you as the host see what question is really common in your attendees. So attendees, if they're given permission, can upvote, which is really similar to a like on a Facebook post, any question by clicking the thumbs up icon. This allows the host, the co-host, or the panelist to identify common questions in the crowd, and then the Q&A can be sorted based on most upvotes. The default setting is for the Q&A to be sorted based chronological order. So if you want, you can sort it based on most upvotes or most common questions. In order for this feature to work, though, you have to allow for attendees to see all questions and give them permission to upvote. Again, this is a setting that can be changed during the meeting. Zoom is highly customizable. There are lots of options, lots of settings to play with. I would encourage you to take a practice run through it, see what you like. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you so much.